Well, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is back as a new week begins. We'll see how much longer the dry air holds in the Northeast because we do have a weather system to the west in the Great Lakes. Also, watching with increasing interest low pressure in the Caribbean, which is destined to become a tropical storm in another couple of days. And, well, there could be some interesting impacts along the Gulf Coast, including for me. We'll talk about that and so much more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And of course, you can, where'd it go? Did I lose
Where'd it
my
go?
sponsorship page? I did. Oh, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm half awake. I'm half asleep. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Been away for 2 days. I forget how to do everything. You can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast when you shop on Amazon by using the referral link at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast. You get your stuff. Amazon throws us a little bit of coin for sending you there, and you've done your good deed for the day. So support us if you'd like on the referral link on Amazon. So, in all seriousness, I have to tell you, just watching how this whole thing is developing with respect to the system in the Caribbean, I'm equally interested in the upper air dynamics that are forming along the Gulf states because there's a serious upper low that's going to get involved in all of this, and that could have some rather interesting and nasty ramifications for not just the Gulf Coast wherever it winds up making landfall, but inland areas from this could wind up dealing with wind, rain, and perhaps quite a bit of severe weather.
And I do want to mention that while the forecast, I'm not sure what you had called for, Joe, but on my Facebook forecast, I have rain or some precipitation locally here in the tri-state area for Wednesday and Thursday. But I want to stress that has absolutely nothing to do with what is possibly going to be coming our way, or coming your way, or down in the Gulf coastal area with that tropical system over the weekend, not over the weekend, but later this week. It's two separate systems. Our rain producing system up here, and again, we had another dry day today. I'm beginning to lose count. I think it's 13 that we're now
14. Because
14.
Thursday was 11, so this was day 14. Did you
It's
put
pretty.
anything in for did you put anything in for tomorrow?
No, I did not.
All right.
I have the mention of cloud cover for tonight and more clouds and sun tomorrow, but I, excuse me, don't have anything mentioned precipitation wise until either Tuesday night or Wednesday.
Okay. There's some of the guidance is throwing in some showers tomorrow afternoon. I don't know how real that is, or if it's all aloft, but we'll take a look at all of that. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight, and for those of you watching in the background, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. The occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a big storm around somewhere, and if we add extra shows, we'll certainly let you know about it during the course of the week. Make sure for you new folks, subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, you can show that you like the show by liking it.
And it's always nice to be liked.
It is. It definitely is. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on as far as the system that we've just been talking about here in the Caribbean, and you can see it here on the satellite loop. A lot of showers and thunderstorms and convection has been breaking out this afternoon. There is a broad low down here, but we don't have as yet a tight, well-defined circulation. Let me get this set so you can see. There's a larger close-up view here that I've brought up, and uh, you notice that there is a ton of moisture with this, and there is some bursting of thunderstorms that's going on right now. But we still have to wait to get to that center. Has to get to a point where there's a tight, well-defined center, and that might not happen for another day and a half. Maybe by Tuesday morning, we could be seeing a tropical depression, or maybe even a tropical storm, depending on how this all plays out. The wider view, I just also want to just point out quickly, if you look off well to the east of the Bahamas, out in the central Atlantic. This is something that the Hurricane Center mentioned in the tropical weather outlook. You can clearly see a low level rotation on the far right. And there's some thunderstorms that are bursting around the center there this evening. But so far, we haven't seen the Hurricane Center really do much with that. Not that that's any impact anyway with respect to the weather in the United States or anywhere close by. But here's the wide satellite loop, and you've got this upper trough and cold front that's approaching, moving through the Great Lakes. You have the old coastal system, which has finally drifted far enough south to take the rain out of southeastern New England, although there's still some leftover clouds there. But again, as you say, Joe, it was a really another nice day, and the system moving eastward is going to be moving into all that dry air. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that moisture actually survives.
It can't be very much. I don't think we're going to have very much. Whatever we get in terms of precipitation Wednesday into Thursday does not look like a whole heck of a lot. And so far, at this moment in time at Central Park, this is the third driest September on record, believe it or not. And we've only had at Central Park about a half inch of rain for the entire month of September. And as you just pointed out, Joe, 14 consecutive dry days. And tomorrow, and maybe even Tuesday as well, could add on to that. So it just keeps going on and on and on, this unusual spell of dry weather.
I remember a September, I don't know if it was in the late 70s maybe or early 80s, and I seem to recall in my mind that we went 23 consecutive days without a drop of rain. That's 23 sticks into my head.
Well, you have been around as I have for many, many, many years, and sometimes something, the Rolodex in our head suddenly stops somewhere, and uh, it may be like 5 or 10 years ago, you or I would have been able to absolutely, positively identify the year and even the days, but now
And
we
what
can
time
only,
and what time the first raindrops arrived when the
exactly, and
streak
now
was broken.
we can only vaguely point to a specific year and wonder whether or not that was the year in question where we had a long spell of dry weather.
Speaking of dry across the Gulf states in the southeast, for the most part, it was a dry and very warm weekend. It was quite warm here. We got up into the 80s today again, even though this morning we were down in the 50s. But that's, the lengthening nights helped the cause at night to get the temperatures to come down. But at least from Texas to Georgia down to Florida and then up through the Carolinas, other than maybe a spot shower thunder shower here and there. It's been a pretty quiet day. We do have more thunderstorm activity breaking out tonight across northwest Texas and into Oklahoma. And there's some stronger cells in the mix. First off, you take a look at the showers. Yeah, it's not a half bad looking area of shower activity moving uh, off the upper peninsula, the lower peninsula of Michigan to the Canada side north of Lake Erie, and then you have some showers that extend down into eastern Ohio and northern Kentucky. Again, this system should weaken somewhat or quite a bit as it moves eastward. Uh, we'll follow it along, of course, and see what it does. Meanwhile, in the southeast, again, just a few spot showers or thunderstorms scattered in parts of South Georgia and in southern portions of South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Florida is very quiet tonight. Hardly anything going on other than it looks like a couple of downpours near Lake Okeechobee. And then we have this area here in from central Texas into Oklahoma with some stronger thunderstorms in the mix, although there's no severe weather watches or warnings up. There's one odd warning that has popped up in southeast Missouri and another one in southern Illinois on the Kentucky state line. And all of that is kind of getting shoved out to the east. The west is fairly quiet for the most part. Storm Prediction Center tonight, marginal risk in a narrow band going from southwest Texas through north central Texas and then across Oklahoma, southern Missouri, western Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. Tomorrow, we have marginal risk from northern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, southern Illinois and Indiana into much of Kentucky and northern Tennessee. But again, only a marginal risk, which means isolated severe thunderstorms. And on day three, which is Tuesday into Wednesday, we have some general thunderstorm activity being indicated by SPC from New Mexico east to Georgia, and then northward from there up into western and central Pennsylvania, and into western New York, and then back down in the Ohio Valley, and also in South Florida. Take a look at this is the rainfall from WPC, and this is among that concern that I mentioned earlier with the expected upper air dynamics that are going to get involved with this tropical system. Uh, these are 7-day rainfall amounts which take us through next Monday, and they're showing much of Georgia in 4 to 5 inches, except where I am, where they've got 5 to 7, and five
Hmm.
to seven in western North Carolina. Also, heavy rains in Florida, in back through Mississippi, several inches or more, and some of that, of course, what you see further north in parts of Missouri and Illinois. Some of that's tonight, but it's not much of it. More of this is later this week. Again, all having to do, if you look at how the rainfall is arced like a comma back into southern Missouri, that's that upper low that I'm talking about that's going to be getting involved in all this. In the Northeast, Joe, they got a quarter inch with a half inch, a quarter inch in New Jersey, half to 3 quarters in North Jersey. Mounts pick up in Pennsylvania and western New York, decrease across eastern New York and in southern and central New England, and then pick up again to a half to 3 quarters, isolated 1 inch amounts in northern New England. And the west is quiet, except for the northwest, where we've got some rain coming in. So a lot. This is a very weird setup. And I want to I want to show you what the upper air looks like with this. Because you
Take a
don't
look.
see, because we have that, it's coming up on the screen. And I'm going to use the US view here. So, this is now Tuesday that you see on the screen. And there's a short wave that's dropping down through the Dakotas, and it cuts off an upper low forms over northwestern Iowa and drops almost straight southward down into Arkansas. You do not normally see upper lows like this. This is a vigorous upper low that's dropping southward, and that's going to pick up the tropical system and shoot it northward. In fact, they sort of hook up together, and the tropical system is going to tend to pinwheel around the other. Uh, as, as far as the Northeast is concerned, because of this pinwheeling that's going on and hooking up with that upper low, there is a short wave that's dropping down into eastern Canada along about Thursday that forms a cutoff that goes into northern New England. But uh, that is completely separate from what's going on in the South. And if this verifies the way it looks, uh, you're not going to that this system is not going to be pushing rain all the way up the East Coast, nor will the center of it uh, push up the East Coast. What I'm concerned about here is that this pinwheeling, almost negatively tilted system that the tropical system comes ashore somewhere on the Florida Panhandle, let's say. And it's going to be very, very slow to weaken because there's going to be all sorts of effects from the upper low that are going to help this system maintain some of its strength as it moves inland. It'll probably get hybridized to some degree, I guess, over time. But the point is to have a vigorous system like this in the upper atmosphere interacting with the tropical system, I think is really the ingredients where you could wind up with some very, very nasty impacts in areas, not just on the coast, which would be obvious, but away from the coast. This is a pretty serious looking setup here.
And one of the reasons why the effects of whatever tropical cyclone does develop down over the Gulf states, and
Joe, I lost you, Joe Rayo. You froze up.
high pressure
Okay, there you
that
go.
is going, and that high pressure dome is going to pretty much say, no, you're not coming this way. You'll probably get, maybe as far north as Virginia, but you ain't coming up here for later in the week. The thing that's going to, as I said, mention earlier, the thing that's going to bring us the wet weather for Wednesday and the Thursday is kind of a tandem of fronts. So first the warm front, which on its approach will probably bring us some light rain here for Wednesday. And then as we move into Wednesday night and Thursday, a cold front approaching, and that cold front will bring in its own share of showers and rain. And then that'll move offshore. That big high will build in, and that'll set the stage, hopefully, for some nice weather for the first weekend, the first full weekend of fall, Friday into Saturday and Sunday of next week.
And while that's all going on, and you are correct, because there's another high that's building southward that, in a way, it's really kind of acting as a block for this. And then, of course, you've got the upper features that are pinned down. It's almost like a split flow. Um, Here comes the tropical system. Now, this is the GFS, which on this run, the 18Z run, strengthens it to a pretty strong Category 3 hurricane as it comes ashore, somewhere near Panama City or Pensacola, somewhere in there. And again, what concerns me is, when the way the surface low is tracked, Joe, it still has a 985 low, virtually going right over my house. So look at how tight the gradient is on land. That is very, very tight. Uh, like we're used to tropical systems that they tend to come in along the Gulf Coast, and then they sort of they weaken and they begin to spread out, and the gradient lessens, and then wind is not really that much of a factor as the hours go by, storm moves inland, the low starts to weaken pretty quickly. But this is really hanging on because of that upper air feature. I mean, I can't. I wouldn't know what to forecast if this were literally correct. I don't know what I would forecast for winds in Georgia and in Alabama in terms of speed. But that gradient looks to me like it could be every bit of gusts over 40.
Would they issue let's say, a wind advisory or a high wind
Oh
advisory?
yeah. Oh, I
That
mean, the criteria here, where I am in North Georgia for a wind advisory is like 25 to 30. So yeah, I mean, we probably would have a high wind warning with this. But it is going to be something I think definitely worth paying attention to. This is a little bit of an unusual setup. And the other thing is, uh, when you're dealing with an upper low like this, and I'll bring that back. When you're dealing with an upper low like this, getting involved, you have to include the possibility that you know, there could be a widespread severe weather outbreak across areas of, I would say, Alabama, Georgia, into South Carolina, and probably even for Florida.
it uh, it looks like it's going to be rather nasty if you're down along the Gulf Coast or somewhere in the southeastern United States, and I find it rather, again, rather interesting. The one thing, Joe, that has changed over the last couple of days relative to this tropical system, a few days ago, the European had the landfall for this system much further to the west, more toward Texas or Louisiana, and it was the GFS that had landfall near the panhandle of Florida. Now it looks like the European has joined in with the GFS and basically pointing in the direction of the Florida panhandle for possible landfall, and that would be, if all goes according to schedule, sometime later Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Interesting upper air that we have because we do have blocking up in Greenland. The block that was in eastern Canada is moving northward up over Greenland and northeastern Canada, and that's helping to set up these upper lows that want to dive southeastward, like this one here. This is the one for Thursday, and you can see the tropical system reflected in the upper air. By Tuesday night, I mean, the GFS would certainly imply that this would be a tropical storm at the very least in the Northwest Caribbean by Tuesday night, and then it just shoots right up. But meanwhile, we've got higher than normal pressures all across the northern latitudes in the North Atlantic and up into the Arctic region. In the longer range, what's kind of also interesting to me is that you're getting, cutoffs that are forming one south of Nova Scotia, if the GFS is right, at the end of the week, and that steers some kind of tropical system out in the Atlantic to the northeast. Another one, so that the Hurricane Center is watching, so that goes out. And then another big cutoff drops down into the Dakotas and swings eastward. And then there's another tropical system that the GFS, and this one, GFS actually has a fairly sizable tropical system approaching the Leeward Islands and, turning when it gets east of the Bahamas with a cutoff near the East Coast. It's a very interesting dynamic pattern over the next 2 weeks. So, obviously we're going to see the upper air adjust and change over time, particularly after this week. I mean, there'll be some changes in the next several days with what's going on in the eastern part of the United States in terms of the strength of the upper low that's dropping down and so on. But longer range, obviously, how the model likes to wander around and do things on one run and then it's gone in the next. But it's just kind of an interesting pattern here with the way these with the higher pressures up in Canada and points northward and all the lower pressures down in the United States and off the west coast.
And just want to thank all those who have hit the like button so far. 44 on the number of likes we've had out of 153 people watching. I'm wondering how many of the 153 who are watching now, at least on the chat board, attended yesterday's Tri-State Weather Conference. And Joe, I did give more than a few plugs to our show, hoping that we would bring viewers who did not know or were not aware of the Joe and Joe show into our kin. And a lot of people were very interested. And if they're not on the chat board, then maybe they're lurkers watching right now. So welcome to all of you who might be new and might be watching the Joe and Joe show for the very first time.
Yes, we're hope and stay. Don't just watch it once. Stay. A couple of things, other things I just want to pull up here, because the Hurricane Center is, the tropical weather outlook just updated. So let's take a look at what they're saying on the new outlook. Okay, so there it is. Let me give the graphic a refresh just in case. And they're showing two systems here. They're not even showing the one in the Atlantic anymore. So they've gotten rid of that.
Was that
And
Gordon?
no, I don't think it was. I think it was something else. Um, anyway, 50 and 80 now. So they went from 40 in the for 40% chance in 48 hours. Now it's 50. 80% chance. That's unchanged from the previous tropical weather outlook. And the environmental conditions, I'm just trying to see if they changed the wording here. Appear conducive for development. Tropical depression or tropical storm is likely to form during the next few days. That's hasn't changed very much. Yeah, they pretty much ran it word for word. And in the Eastern Atlantic, they're talking about a tropical wave located near the west coast of Africa. Conditions could support some gradual development of that. And if we look on the North Atlantic view, I'll bring that up and we'll take a look at uh, what's going on there. So here we go. So we've got some wave coming off the African coast, which the GFS does develop once it goes west of the Cabo Verde Islands, dropping the pressures under 1,000 and under 990. So it looks like it wants to make it a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane in time. But that is probably going to be with the cutoff that's dropping down near Nova Scotia. That's going to probably recurve. Then there's another one that comes off the African coast behind it, and that one is one that the model kind of holds together as it approaches the Windward Islands, and you see it here: 981, 974, 958, then turns it northward. Yeah, now we're going out into fantasy land. It brings it close to the Bahamas, to maybe not quite to 70 west, but awfully close, and then takes it north northeast from there. Gets it down to the 928. Gets it down to a 926 pressure as it goes very close to Bermuda on this run. But again, that's fantasy land, folks. Just to be clear, we could see it on the next run. It could wind up being gone. But for now, all the attention needs to be focused on the system in the Caribbean because this again, we're not how strong it gets is a big question. You've got and how it interacts with this upper low is a big question. I've just brought up the European, and we'll bring it a little bit closer here. I mean, the European also now because I think the problem, you mentioned the European before. I think the problem with the European was it wasn't seeing that cutoff dropping down into Arkansas. The GFS picked that up fairly quickly, and now the European also has a hurricane, although not quite as robust as the GFS does. But the same idea holds here with the cutoff there. The same idea of what could go on across the Gulf states is also intact on the European. We can take a look at the new icon model, and the icon is actually a little bit to the right of the European and the GFS, brings it, somewhere along the Florida Big Bend as a landfall, and then takes it north up into Georgia and brings precipitation more into South Carolina. I still think even if that were to happen, if it was more to the right, you still have a lot of blocking going on. You still have this cutoff dropping off into New England. This system would only be able to get so far north and then get deflected northwest or even westward once it's well inland.
And do you think that when the consolidation occurs between the upper low over Arkansas and the tropical system coming out of the Gulf, once they consolidate and get together, you think the upper low is going to help to actually increase the forward speed of the tropical system as it heads toward Florida, which could only lead to even more problems? If I've always said that when forward speed of a tropical system, a hurricane or tropical storm is on the increase, that forward speed only helps to add to the circulation, the steady or sustained speeds around the center of the storm. So I'm just wondering whether or not they'll will instead of seeing a slow approach to the panhandle of Florida on Thursday, whether or not we might see the thing just rev up and hit Florida hard with that.
Well,
Uh,
I think that's a good point. There's a lot of variables here because of the upper air setup. I mean, the GFS does accelerate this. For, it's moving at a pretty good clip here. I'm just going to just do a little, So Wednesday night, it's at 20. All right, let's say 23 and a half. 23 and a half north and 86 and three quarters west, almost to 87. So, but 23 and a half. Okay. 24 hours later, it's on land at uh, 30 and a half. So it moves 420 miles in 24 hours. So it sort of it suggests a forward speed maybe at around what, 18, 19 miles an hour.
that's pretty fast
And,
for a tropical system.
and by 36 hours, it's up at 30, almost, well, it's right over my house, pretty much. 34.4 and 84.6. That's close to where I am. I think I'm at 34.4 and 84.0. So that's about half a degree west of me, or 64.0. So I'm sorry, 84.0. So about a half a degree, a little more than half a degree west of me. So we're talking what, 30 or 40 miles from where the low center passes. So from 23 to 34 is 11 degrees. So that's 660 miles in 36 hours. Yeah, I mean that's moving at a clip of 20. This probably also has storm surge ramifications for the Florida coast, particularly east of the center, moving at that rate.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people make mention of the fact that they're trying to allude to maybe a similarity to Hurricane Hazel in 1954. Let's point out that Hazel, which really did a number on Toronto, Canada. I mean, that storm held together all the way up into Ontario, Canada. And what we're talking about here, folks, is a storm that once it makes landfall in Florida and heads northward, it's going to still be rather potent, but it's going to diminish some as it heads northward and then perhaps even completely disappear once it hits that building ridge of high pressure, that's one thing they did not have in 1954 with Hazel, was a big blocking ridge of high pressure, which would have precluded the storm from coming as far north as Ontario. So, no, that's not going to happen this time around. Not if that high has anything to say about it later in the week or this upcoming weekend.
Right, and you see on the surface here, whatever showers we get on Wednesday, and that goes out. And then, of course, higher pressures start to build again Thursday and Friday uh, north of Lake Huron. You see the big high just sort of, wraps around the lower pressures in the south. So the system just basically falls apart after Friday as it heads up into Tennessee and into Kentucky, and then just then it's all the upper low that you see reflected. So it's a very again, it's very bizarre. And as far as the weather elsewhere, is certainly in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic states, so you get this front with showers and whatever happens on Wednesday, and that goes out, and then the high just builds in, and then it's nothing but dry weather for the rest of the week into next weekend, and maybe even a little bit beyond that. This might be the only chance for rain for the rest of the month for much of the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states' weather system on Wednesday.
Yes, it's quite amazing how dry it's been. And from what I saw earlier on the 7-day outlook from WPC, they're suggesting that we could pick up a half an inch out of this event on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm not sure. I think that might be a little bit excessive. I didn't have a chance. I'm looking at it right now. If you just hang on for a second, I want to see what Le Plumes uh, are. I want to see.
While you're looking at La Plumes, Brandon Doherty, thanks for hitting super chat tonight. And he says, Joe, the wedding pictures, I guess, on Facebook that you put up were fantastic, and I would concur. They were fantastic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we had my daughter and I. We had a bit of an argument when she pretty much planned this out. Well, she and the executive producer. But I mean, I was saying, you're making a taking a big chance, planning everything out of doors. And as it turned out on that day, September 1st, which was 3 weeks ago, can't believe it's been already 3 weeks. Um, we had thunderstorms the night before into the early part of the morning on that day, but they just cleared out. It was a very warm, a rather humid day, but we had the sun shining and everything turned out all right. So I'm happy that everything turned out okay. Joe, on Le Plumes, we are seeing this is now through 6Z on the 26th. So that would be Thursday. So through 2 a.m. on Thursday, the Plumes model is saying that for Central Park, or for actually for LaGuardia, 0.21 inches. So that's less than half of what is being alluded to by WPC. They are going again for about a half an inch, and it still could turn out to be that way. Um, Looking north up toward, let's say, Poughkeepsie, Poughkeepsie has even less, and that's closer to where I am, 0.11. So, as I said, I don't think we're going to see all that much Wednesday and Thursday. It will be significant only in the sense that it'll be the most precipitation we have had here in about 2 weeks. But if you're looking for some like heavy drenching rains to break the drought or break this extended dry spell, I don't really see that happening, at least here in the tri-state.
By the way, I put up the this is the 18Z. This is basically the 12Z ensemble, but they have it initialized at 18Z. But this is the ensemble look of the GFS, which is left of the operational, by the way. The mean position is bringing it on shore in the westernmost part of the Florida Panhandle. That's the mean position. And then taking it up northward through Alabama and then swinging it westward into Arkansas. You can see there's some outliers, more outliers to the east than there are to the west as far as the motion is concerned. Again, this is the ensembles. The hurricane, they just made this Invest 97L, so there was no 18Z run of the hurricane tracking models, but there will be a 0Z run. It's past 0Z. They probably won't be up for another 45 minutes. They did have the first run of the intensity guidance is kind of interesting. They only have four models here, but they all strengthen it to a hurricane, one to a Cat 1, two of them to a Cat 2, and two of them to a Cat 3 before landfall. So that's the early version of the intensity guidance. And we can also look at, let's see if we got, uh, no, there's no H wharf. We do have an HMON, the HMON, uh, the human model,
Yeah.
which is anything but. But this thing, has it by Wednesday morning. It has it actually as almost a hurricane in the Northwest Caribbean, and then it goes northward. It's so hard to see the geography on this. I'm trying to find it. It's like it's still in the Gulf. We're Thursday afternoon, so it's a little slower, but it gets it down to a 9:42 and brings it on. It's also much further to the east. It takes it inland over the Florida Big Bend, crossing the state of Florida, and then moving off the coast near Savannah. That's got all this big rain going all the way up into North Carolina. I don't know. That to me, some of these other models that they have, like the H1 and a few others, is they tend to do some really squirrely things. And since this is really the first run of this series, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in it.
No, I
Um,
wouldn't either.
I'm just trying to see. They got the HAFS A, and then there's the HFSB, the B model. Okay, so the B model of this, just to run it back. So here we go. It's I can't even see where they got it. It actually takes it onshore in the northeastern part of the Yucatan as a hurricane, then out in the Gulf of Mexico, moving it north northwest and deepening. Gets down to about a 961, and this one has it making landfall Pensacola, Panama City, somewhere in between there, and then going into southern Alabama, and then riding up into northwest Georgia, a 987 low in the northwestern corner of Georgia, with heavy rains sweeping up the state and up into Tennessee. That looks to me like that matches up better with what the GFS has, and but again, it's the first run of these model guidance packages that they have with respect to, and they got so many of them. I mean, it's mind-boggling how much they have. Um, but and they can certainly be very confusing when you're trying to maybe not so much in the short range, but in the longer range, they just get it's so confusing for a forecaster trying to focus on where you think this might go.
Lord Kate on the chat board is asking, what is the longest interval of time without any measurable precipitation? And again, we so far have only reached, and I say only because when you look on the Central Park or the Upton site for this answer, 14 is nothing. 14 is nothing compared to the consecutive days without measurable 1/100th of an inch or greater precipitation at Central Park. Joe, get ready. 36 days.
36.
36 days, October 10th to November 13th, 1924. 36 days without a drop of rain at Central Park, believe it or not. And I'm looking here, you said you remember a period in September, maybe in the 1970s, and I don't really see that. The only
Or late 70s or early 80s. That's somewhere in there.
Right, but I don't see anything like that remote. I mean, a lot of these dates, all right, the only thing that would come close to that wouldn't be
Hmm.
in the 70s or 80s, but in the 60s. And February in 1968, from the 4th through the 28th of February, 25 consecutive days without any measurable precipitation.
No,
Maybe,
maybe it wasn't September. Maybe it was October.
wait a minute, hold it. Here we go. October 3rd to October 28th, 1973. 26 days of dry weather, 26 days without any measurable precipitation in 1973.
Yeah, see,
Oc-
I thought it would have been. Well, maybe it was. Maybe it was 1973. I don't know. I thought it was maybe a little later than that,
I
but I
see a
could
lot
be.
of
I could be wrong.
I see a lot of, in this list. I see, 1924, 1941, 1910, 1884, 1939, 1942. A lot of these events apparently took place. Oh, here's another one that we may have remembered, but it's not September, October. It's January 23rd to February 15th, 1980. I
I
remember that.
that I remember that. That was a year where like the highlight of that winter, if I recall, was the fact that we set a record for the highest high pressure that was ever observed. That was the big deal about that
It
winter.
was a very depressing. That winter we had so many. I mean, it was. You're right. We had cold days, high pressure in control, dominating and shoving most of the possible storms that might bring us some snow off to our south. But from the 23rd of January to February 15th, 1980, 24 consecutive days without any measurable precipitation. So what's going to happen is that we're at 14 days now, tomorrow 15, 16 on Tuesday. So the string is going to end at 16, and that wouldn't even make this list. The list doesn't begin until 24 consecutive days. So let's
All right,
try. So
I want to just look at something here. Just give me 1 second if I can find it. Uh, I'm on the on the Atlanta Weather Service. See if they have a area forecast discussion, which they do, and see if they mention anything here in the long term. Um, all right, ensemble guidance continues to indicate an area of low pressure forming over the Yucatan Peninsula before moving into the western Gulf of Mexico. NHC is now carrying an 80% chance for tropical development over the next 7 days. Current EPS and GEF's ensemble tracks are indicating that anywhere from the Louisiana Mississippi coastline to Florida for any potential landfall. And of course, I think just to stop there for a moment, the earlier it gets involved with that upper low, the maybe the more northwest it goes as opposed to going straight north. But that we'll have to wait and see. At this time, although models are beginning to come together better, would like to see another run or two for consensus before certainty increases on our end. Another factor coming into play is how this troughing plays out over the eastern uh, continental U.S. I think it's a reference to the upper low that what we've been talking about, and how it will help steer the system. Current rainfall totals have gone up to around 3 to 4 inches over the weekend, but again, with the uncertainty, this is highly subject to change. Blah blah blah. So that's the end of that. So that's Atlanta's area forecast discussion, and Tallahassee, Tallahassee on theirs was a little more. Um, let's see. Similar to yesterday, guidance continues to diverge notably as we approach Thursday and move into the weekend regarding tropical development in the upper level pattern. Models indicate that a deep upper trough may form over the central U.S., as was shown yesterday. This upper level feature would be supportive of a tropical system moving north through the Gulf of Mexico. That's correct. If a system were to develop in time, uncertainty still remains quite high regarding placement of the aforementioned trough and the exact location and time the system could, quote, in quotes, develop, and any change with these variables will have a notable impact regarding what could happen 7+ days from today. Well, it'll probably be sooner than that. Additionally, guidance is sped up with respect to the system forming, which, if it continues on this trend, will drastically change the forecast going into the weekend. If any tropical, which is probably too long because the models are saying no, it might be more like Thursday, Friday. If any tropical impacts were to occur, this time frame would be late this week. If this trend continues, it will drastically change the forecast going into the weekend. If any tropical impacts were to occur, the time frame would be late this week. Okay, so I didn't read far enough. and into the weekend, with Thursday appearing possible at the very earliest. Currently, NHC has highlighted an area with a 70% chance, that was earlier, now it's 80%, of tropical storm formation over the Northwest Caribbean up to the Gulf of Mexico over the next 7 days. So, again, the local offices, Joe, are just, they're paying attention, which is good to know. And I would advise anybody, any of our viewers that are watching tonight, if you're, across the South, to be sure to tune in, because I live here in the South. I'm in North Georgia. Joe's up in Putnam Valley in New York. So this it's certainly front and center for me if I'm going to wind up with the center of a dying hurricane moving up through Georgia and heading up right to my house.
Well, Joe, the last couple of years, I've seemed to be at the epicenter of so many storms that have dumped so much rain on my property. This year, of course, it's a much different situation, a much different scenario. Although just a stone's throw to the north and east of where I am, poor Dennis Cassia, a member of our nightly troop, got battered because Connecticut had some devastating flooding, and it was so very localized. But I say, now that you're in line for a major weather system heading your way, I say spread the love.
Why not? Do you have Briller Jeopardy, or do I? I don't think I have it, so you may have it.
I have Briller Jeopardy tonight. Yes, indeed.
All right, let's do it.
We'll do it as soon as I get the Facebook page up, and I know that Scott Briller sent this to me, and here it is.
Oh wait, hold on, hold your thought one there. The zero Z. Well, somebody must have heard me at the Hurricane Center, because the zero Z hurricane model track guidance, which I didn't think would be out until after 9 o'clock, is out. So we're seeing the first models here, the first model run of all these different models, and the concentration. There's probably more members that will show up later tonight at 6Z and tomorrow at 12. But you can see the track turns northward and then northeastward, coming ashore. Again, right around Panama City, I guess, somewhere in there, Panama City, Pensacola, somewhere in there, and then moving northward through eastern Alabama, western Georgia, and then flinging around westward into southern Missouri. So, and then there's one outlier. Of course, there's always has to be one outlier. The furthest east outlier takes it over Tampa, comes out the other side of Florida, makes landfall again west of Cape Hatteras into North Carolina, probably near Cape Fear, and comes out in northeastern North Carolina, and it's off the Delmarva Peninsula in about five days. So that's the one outlier that is doing it. Every other ones are concentrated, across western Florida, the Panhandle. So there you have it. We'll see where it
There.
goes in the coming days.
All right. So on Briller Jeopardy tonight, the
Oh,
average.
one more thing. One more thing. I'm sorry. Zero Z intensity guidance, which has a lot more members on it. Uh, all but one take it to at least a category 1. You've got several of them that take it to a cat 2. You've got 2 of them that take it to a cat 3. Sorry for the interruption, Mr. Rayo. The stage is yours.
Well, then here we go again for a third time. Briller Jeopardy, average high temperatures in these foreign cities in September. I hope all of you are well aware of what happens elsewhere aside from the United States. We'll start with Amsterdam, Joe. The average September high temperature in Amsterdam.
I will say 66.
Oh my God.
Let me
WMBC
see. That was just Jason Fox got it too. 66.
and William
And
Newberg.
and William Uber. Very good. Just
How
took a
about
while.
Athens? How about Athens, Greece?
How about Athens? Um, I'm really on just on the blind here, so I'll say 84.
Ah, Joe, the snake is lurking.
Really? William Uber said 81. Rich Rothmansky said 83.
Rich Schwarzmansky gets it. Congratulations,
And,
Rich.
and Vincent
83.
Croce at 83.
Yes.
Your bells are malfunctioning.
What do you mean?
They're just tinkling.
Oh,
Maybe you're
well,
not maybe you're not waving them enough.
how's
Yeah,
that?
they don't sound very loud. They usually sound a lot louder.
Oh, I don't know.
You have your mic on?
Yeah, of course I have
Oh,
my mic on.
okay, just checking.
All right. All right. It's technology, Joe. Budapest. Budapest.
Budapest?
Yes.
Budapest?
Yes.
Hungary.
No, not so much.
Yeah, no, I had a sandwich before the show. Um, Budapest, I'll say, hmm, I don't even have a clue with this. I'll say 71.
Not bad considering you have no clue, but it's a pretty close guess.
Latex Dream says 72. William Uber says 73.
Got it. 73. William Hubert. Congratulations. Now we go to number 4 on the list. I don't know. Is it Copenhagen or Copenhagen?
Either way, it's in Sweden. It's in Sweden. I'll say, again, I'm just like stabbing in the dark here. 59.
A little bit on the coolish side, but not a bad guess.
Okay. Robert Lomnicki says 64. Jason Fox says 64. Rich Belander 63. Chuck Cardillo 63. Frank Scalera 63. Waterhouse Bonsai 62. Any
It, Mike,
closer?
Mike, Mike Waterhouse, Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, Bonsai, and Dennis Cassie also 62 degrees for Copenhagen. And finally, the number 5 city, foreign city, and I've been to this city, Dublin.
In Ireland. Hmm.
Why is the population growing so quickly in Ireland, Joe? Because the population is Dublin. Uh,
I will say 62.
again, ever so close the snake is going to bite you.
Mike Waterhouse Bonsai says 61.
Nope. So I guess it
So
means
guess it's 63,
it's 63, and William,
which
you
Croce and Uber get that at 63.
yes, and there you go.
All right. So we're done, right?
Good night. Yes,
All right. Okay, folks. Thanks for being here. It's been a good solid hour we put in tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast.
and thank you
Uh,
for 87 likes, at least according to my clock or counter.
I'm at 91.
I have 91 now.
100 gets Joe to ring the bell one more time. But Brandon Doherty, the Delaware weather guy, thanks again for hitting Super Chat tonight. Most appreciated. And I'm trying to think if there's anything that happened to me this weekend that was exciting. I would say no. Really didn't, do very much. I'm trying to remember how many episodes of Perry Mason I watched yesterday.
I had
I think it was six.
I had to do the MC the weather conference at Western Connecticut State College, and so Renata and I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We headed out at 7 o'clock to get to they're in Danbury, Connecticut, the university. Got there just after 8 o'clock. Took about 15 or 20 minutes because it's a college campus and it's very confusing. We're trying to find, where the science building was. Finally did find it thanks to the police, the university police, who pointed us in the right direction. And then we were there from 8:30 until about 5:30. No, excuse me, 8:30 to about 4:30. And then you would think that after all of that, we'd be able to go home and relax. But no, I had to go to a party last night. One of my relatives having a birthday party in Yonkers. And so we went from Danbury, Connecticut, all the way down to Yonkers. And after we spent several hours there, at least uh, we had dinner there. They had some food and a cake and everything. We didn't get back home until like 11 o'clock last night. And Joe, I've spent the entire day today trying to recover.
No, I don't
That's
blame you. That's
I've
sort of
just
like when Ernie Ford, let go of Teensy, walked right around to Weensy, and as he said, it was no short trip.
that's right. Danged if it ain't.
Yes.
Well, now
Dang if it ain't, by the way, at 102 likes.
there you go. Congratulations to all. Here's the first time we ring the bell for 100 likes or more. And I don't know if you can hear it. Anybody can, if it sounds loud or whatever. But anyway, thank you so much for supporting Joe and Joe.
And yes, Vincent Croce, another I Love Lucy reference. All right, we'll see everybody tomorrow night at the usual shopping time. That's 7:35 p.m. Eastern. So have a good night and a good day tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow night. Night, night.
Good night.